Hi, my name is Aditya Naidu. I'm a full stack developer and senior technical lead at my organization. And currently, I passed EC 900 with a score above 900. I would say the exam was not very difficult. At the same time, it is not very easy as well because it is somewhere in between all the time. I mean, all the tests and all the forums which I visited. I have prepared this material and also my study approach based on discussions in Quora, in Reddit.com, in Stack Overflow, in GitHub, and also I went through several videos. I went through the videos in Channel 9, I went in videos in YouTube, I went through videos in Microsoft Ignite, all virtual training material, virtual instructor-led trainings. And I prepared a certain approach for how to actually crack this exam. So I actually wanted to score out and out. I didn't want to be just in the passing percentage or passing ranges. So I prepared this material on that basis. Let's see if that helps you guys. I started off with cost management and service level agreements. Cost management and service level agreements are something that is common in administrator path, that is AZ104. They are common in AZ204 also, that is a developer path. 400 is Azure DevOps. 303 and 304 are actually two certifications for an architecture role. This is architect and this is, this is architecture and this is the design. So design and architecture both combined to give you an architecture certification. All of them had one thing in common, which I actually looked into the materials which I have seen in, say, Microsoft Learn Path. I saw this material, I saw virtual led trainings, I saw practice tests also for these exams. Everywhere I saw SLA and cost management is being asked in any one form or the other. So that is the reason I started with this. I had a priority list of how to actually prepare for this exam. My priority list is actually some of the reverse order which was just provided by MS Learn. I went through cost management service level agreements first. Later, I jumped to governance, privacy, compliance features. Governance and privacy features are actually very much important to Microsoft Azure in particular because they are, you can say there's something called as a compliance manager, which is not covered in, it is covered partially in MS Learn, but we have to actually study it in detail in case we want to pass this exam because there are questions that come in, you can say from nowhere. And I have prepared this notes based on docs.msn.com only, where actually you have the concepts explained to you much more deeply and much more, you can say, in in an elaborate sense and an understandable sense, so that you're not burdened and you're not buried within theory part of it. Next, I went to next priority of mine was actually security and network security features. Network security features are something that is common in all clouds, not just in Azure. They are common in AWS, they're common in Google Cloud. In virtual networks, VNets, gateways, network switches, traffic managers, all of these concepts are actually very much common in all the other clouds, not just in Azure. So me being a Microsoft person and being a .NET expert, actually I went in a much deeper sense in this, in terms of Azure. But the concepts are the same because all my research and all my questions in all the forums, I actually saw this in many of the topics that have occurred there. Having said that, let's move on to 4 and 5. These are the most tricky part actually in the tests. Cloud concepts, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, shared model. Shared responsibility model. You have pay as you go, capex, opex. All of these concepts are pretty simple and pretty straightforward in the documentation, but the questions that come into picture in this section are actually very, very, very strange. So a lot of practice, a lot of hard work is required to actually get them into your bag. I have posted my links, my study material and my approaches in medium.com, also my website blogs, and how I approach these exams, what materials I use, what references I used. Core services are nothing but you have app services, you have app services, you have virtual machines, you have storage accounts, you have virtual networks, you have all these concepts which are core to Azure. The concepts are the same in all the clouds, but Azure has certain naming conventions. IoT services. You have IoT Central IoT Hub. other places you see it as IoT Edge. So these are the differences, and these are the upgrades that actually Microsoft has introduced in November 2009. I'm sorry, November 2020, November 9, 2020. And finally, you have the tools that are required to actually manage Azure. Azure CLI, PowerShell, uh, you have Cloud Shell, you have command prompts. Even VS Code. I mean, you can actually debug your code in VS Code and logging into Azure, which is nothing but actually PowerShell in disguise. So this is my topic which I choose last because you have Mac OS, you have Linux OS, you have Windows OS, and you have Android also, Android and iOS. So all of these platforms have different tools which you have to use for actually to deploy your services or actually configure services on Azure. Very tricky topic this one. It has some tricky questions. You don't need labs. You don't need any practice on this, but it is actually good to know what works where and what does not work where. In the coming slides, I'll explain what all happens in detail how it works. Next, we have support plans. Uh, you can say that on the first topic on this service level agreements and cost management, support plans are one of the most important parts because you have at least one or two questions that appear in the exam for that. Support plans are basically of five types. You have basic, developer, standard, professional, direct, and premier. Premier has all of the support that is required for any enterprise applications to go live. Having said that, there are differences. The differences between professional direct and premier are as stated below. Here you have pro direct and you have manager led reviews. Also, you have multiple product dependencies. You have pro direct in support in professional direct as well, but this is limited. And you have assured advisor consultations. This is the difference between the professional direct and premier. All of them are actually a subset and superset of each other. So if you see professional direct and premier are actually a subset, and also they have some differences. But going up the ladder, you don't have any differences. You have differences, but they are a superset and a subset from standard, developer, and basic. So you have, as you can see, you have these three topics that are same for all the three of them. For standard billings, you have email and phone support, but in developer, you have business hours email support only. And you have, I think that is the only difference. Plus, you have a trial and production support for developer. For a standard, you have only production support. So it's important to actually get the differences of these right, so that for the exam it will be much more easy for you. Let's go more on to the other topics that are covered in MS Learn and also covered in the prescribed syllabus. Free account. An Azure free account has 12 months of free popular services. You have $200 of credit on any of the services for 30 days, and over 25 services are free. Subscription and offers. Billing and access control boundaries. That is liable for only subscriptions. An account will have multiple subscriptions. Offer details are provided in this link below. I would suggest that you look through these offers, not by heart them, but have them in your back of your head, because one or two questions actually come under subscriptions. Next, we move on to cost management. Cost management has TCO, that is total cost ownership calculator, which is the estimate of saving of operating on Azure over time instead of on-premises data center. You don't need a Azure subscription to use or work on a total cost. Total cost ownership calculator. What is the main purpose of TCO is actually for on-premises. You have on-premises virtual machines or resources which are deployed, and you want to compare that with pay-as-you-go or an OPEX. So this difference is actually calculated by the total cost ownership calculator. Pricing calculator is As of as name suggests, it's the pricing calculator for Azure of real-time services. And it is also an estimate. Having said that, it is much more detailed, and it is for not just for on-premises, it is also for off-premises resources that are there on Azure. Which are the resources which are there on the cloud. So there are actually six, seven categories on that. Pricing calculator provides estimates but are not actual prices. You have region support, you have support options, you have tier, you have billing options, program offers, Azure Dev and test pricing. Cost management plus billing to control uh, spending. This is very much important for the in terms of the exam, because one or two questions I've seen in all the practice tests or all the exams actually appear from somewhere from here. You have report, which what comes under this is reporting, data enrichment, budgets, set spend budgets, alerting. When cost exceeds a certain limit, you get an alert, that is an email alert. Recommendations based on cost recommendations. So this is what is cost management plus billing to control spending. I would suggest this is the most important part which you have to actually keep in your mind for costing, and it is actually real time. So this TCO and pricing calculator are not real time; they are only estimates. But cost management plus billing to control spending is actually real time. Especially you have budgets and alerting, which is extensively used even on hands-on labs. Next, we move on to factors that affect cost. You have the resource type, you have the usage meters, you have the resource usage, location, bandwidth, usage benefit, and reserve instances. I think there are a few more in this, but I have compiled this list to be so short. There are two or three more in this. In Microsoft Learn part, actually, you have everything in detail. But having said that, for the exam, if you remember, this is more than enough. Resource types are nothing but it can be a storage account or performance tier or an access tier. Usage meters are with bandwidth, that is ingress and egress. Ingress is inbound and egress is outbound. I will explain the differences between inbound and outbound in the coming slides. Resource usage is nothing but whatever resources, whatever VMs you use, or whatever IP connections, or you have virtual networks, gateways, sending in sending out data. So whatever you use, that is actually calculated with terms of meter usage also, and also the usage in terms of storage time. So it is very much important to be consider that even if you are not deallocate a resource, they have storage containers that are associated with it, and it is also built. So that is a difference which you have to understand. Location for zone billing, that is the egress data. This is I'll cover this in my blog, and it is very much important to understand that based on location of the same resource or the same configuration, actually it differs because of the location has different traffic and network requirements. So you have different pricing based on the location as well. Bandwidth, as I was saying, is ingress and egress, means in and out of data. Usage meter and bandwidth are separate. Usage meter can be only not just with bandwidth, it is also with the resource and the storage, and also you can have the multiple packets of data that are flowing, have something associated with them, also known as called payloads, which are actually cost friendly. And you have a hybrid benefit usage, which has a software assurance at reduced cost, reserve instances. Okay, reserve instances are nothing but you have VMs that are reserved for usage. You have a benefit that is 1 to 3 years they are reserved, and there's a cost saving benefit for them, and you have 72% of the cost that is reduced in case you actually reserve certain instances for usage. This is part of something called as CapEx, capital expenditure. It comes under capital expenditure in reserve instances. There are type. They are also. You can consider them as an upfront investment, but there's a saving associated to that. So Microsoft is heavily marketing this reserve instances for the benefit of saving the cost. Service level agreements, one of the most important topics of AZ900. Service level agreements are directly related to uptime. There's a performance target that is 3 nines to 5 nines. Percentage of fees you paid is credited back. How what this happens is that you have, in case promise SLA is not delivered to you, and it is say there is a downtime more than expected SLA, that is 3 nines or 5 nines, whatever the service or the resource or the product is offering. You can actually fill out a form. It's a claim approval form, and you send it to Microsoft, and they actually credit that amount back to your account. That is a Azure account. Services are free in preview, but do not come under SLA. As I said, there is a free plan, and there is a preview also. Preview is nothing but the services which are not gone live yet, but they are still in the preview stage. When you have a development cycle which is going on in Azure, you actually go in from a developer to a preview to a production, that is go live. That is general availability is what Microsoft says. And whatever comes in the preview or free is not covered under the SLA. So in case there's a downtime, or in the case there is a lag or a disruption in services, Microsoft is not liable to that. Service lifecycle. As I said, you have a development phase, a public preview, and you have a general availability. There is also a private preview which is available before public preview. A private preview is private to your organization. It can be configured and used as per your convenience. And general availability is something that is useful, that is live. Basically, any person outside of Azure also can actually access it. So, public preview is also accessible, but only to Azure users, and it is accessible outside your organization. Development phase and private preview are within your organization. There's a subset URL for that, and there's preview has no guarantees. Public preview has no guarantee, no SLAs, like indicated in 0.5D. All Azure customers can view public preview services. As I explained, it is general availability, and public all Azure customers, that is customers which are available in Azure or are Azure users, can actually see the public preview websites or APIs which are hosted in Azure. Next, we move on to the second topic, that is identity governance, privacy, and compliance features. You have resource locks and resource tags. One of the two, the two most important topics and most useful topics in all the exams again. You have resource locks, which are actually of two types. You have a read-only or delete lock, and a read-only or a read lock, and you can have a cannot delete or delete lock. Basic operations, CRUD operations, is a create, read, update, delete. So there is no create, there is no update, there is no delete, but there's only read in a read lock. And for a delete lock, you have you have a create, you have an update, but you don't have delete. So that is the difference between read and delete locks. The administrator must remove and then perform the action. In case you have a resource group or a resource, and you have put in a read lock or a delete lock, in case you want to modify or if you want to delete this resource, you have to first remove the lock. The administrator, that is the account administrator or system administrator, must remove the lock to actually perform the operation. And locks apply regardless of the RBAC permissions. RBAC will be covered later. There's a role-based access control. Okay, you can say these are logical locks which have a life cycle, and they are different categories and scopes for that. We will cover this in the coming slides. So most important thing to remember here is logs, subscriptions, resource groups, and resource. The logs apply to these three people, and there are two types. And yes, remove the log before the action, and RBAC has no effect on this. Resource tags. Sorry. Resource tags have nameless value. There is a metadata. Resource tags are nothing but a key value pair, which has a name and a value, and it is used for basically Segregating uses this is mainly for billing purposes. In case, I mean, you can use it for all these purposes like the documentation says, but most prominent use is for two purposes. One is for operations, that is DevOps management, and in case user stories are associated with your DevOps, that is ARM libraries, and you have billings, subscriptions, which were subscriptions is organizational level, is subscriptions is at a standard level. All this can be put in the tags. So tags are managed via the Azure policies. Azure policy is also is, you can say, a deployment strategy. I'm sorry, it is not a deployment strategy. It is most like guidance or rules of how a resource or a resource group or a subscription should work. So they are managed by I mean, segregated via the tags. I mean, the logic is written by the tags. Azure policy, the most important topic in this section. This helps enforce standards and to assess compliance at scale. What this means is that organizations can actually scale from one application to different applications. So how do we manage all the applications, say all the resources in one resource group or all the groups under one application? You define the rules for consistency. So this is the regulatory compliance, the rules, the costs, the storage. All of this can be managed in predefined policies. If I'm not wrong, there are around 110, 115 policies already pre-built in Azure. The number may be more or less now. They have built-in proper policies for storage, network, compute, security, and monitoring services already. The three actions you need to take. You need to create a policy definition. You need to assign definition to a resource. And you need to review the evaluation. Once per hour, this actually happens. After you create the policy and assign this policy, the review or evaluation happens as compliant and non-compliant on an hourly basis on its own. And you just need to go and check in your IAM or your subscription menus where actually this policy is, I mean, is it compliant or not compliant with the policies you have defined. Two more major topics which are very much important to the exam: policy initiative definition and initiative assignment. What is the difference between them and what are these two? Initiative definitions is multiple policies are included as one. It's a superset of many policies. Initiative assignment is actually assignment to a specific scope. I will cover scopes in my blog. I don't think there are slides for that here. But scopes are nothing but you have resource groups, subscriptions, uh, management groups. So these are the various levels of scopes in any Azure account. And management groups come under tenants, and multiple tenants can have only one resource, I mean, one subscription. I'm sorry, multiple management groups can have be resident in one tenant, and one tenant can be associated with only one Active Directory subscription. Azure blueprints. Blueprints happen when actually your subscriptions, I mean, your policies or your rules actually need to be defined for more than one subscription. So this is how it orchestrates it. I mean, these are also the same as Azure policies, only at a bigger scope, and they are deployable with respect to ARM templates. ARM templates are nothing but Azure Resource Management templates, which are JSON files, and they are used for actually configuring dev test tools, deployments, subscriptions, billings. Everything can be managed with an ARM tool. It is related to an authorization, and you have various portals. That is Azure portal. You have Azure CLI, I mean REST CLI clients, which can actually be used to deploy this JSON file. And they manage it. Say you can say this is the backbone of your subscription. Cloud custodian team actually has three steps which manage the blueprints, and each organization has a cloud custodian team and an audit team. So they create the blueprint, they assign the blueprint, they tag the assignments of the blueprint, and for the audits, actually, they see the relationships between create show blueprint and assign the blueprint. Anything inside a blueprint is considered to be an artifact. It can be a subscription, it can be an ARM template, it can be, uh, say, resources which are tagged in different resource groups. So all of them is considered as an artifact. And there's something called as ISO 27701 security compliance. This is for IT systems, basically to do with the security of the, you can say, the robustness of a system, and how penetratable it is, how not penetratable it is. That is what ISO 27701 is all about. Cloud adoption framework. This is something new that has been introduced in the cloud. You have, in case your organization wants to move from on-prem to cloud or from a legacy app to a cloud configuration, these are the steps recommended by Microsoft to actually be followed. You have strategy, you have ready, you have innovate, you have manage, and you have plan, migrate, and you have govern and organize. I think the order is slightly different. It is strategy, plan, ready, migrate, innovate, govern, manage, and organize. So all this strategy, I mean, what is recommended is that you buy at this table, and basically each organization needs to follow this principles to actually have an enterprise level application or applications to follow this adoption. In detail, you have this in the link which I have given in Microsoft Learn. Please go to that, which will give you a complete idea of what is a CAF. Now we go to governance and governance strategies. Cloud Center Excellence team or a cloud establishment team or a custodian team actually manages the governance strategies. As blueprints are managed by several applications, for a single app subscription also you have a cloud enablement team and a custodian team, which is actually basically a company's audit team. And there are three aspects for governance. You have billing, access control, and subscription limits. Same as subscription, boundaries of subscription. Only thing is the subscription limits are limited to a particular user or system user. It can be a system administrator, an authorized user, or unauthorized. I'm sorry, an authorized system administrator, or it can be authorized uh, owner of the subscription. All this is covered in my blog in detail. I mean, these are the short notes for that, for you to actually brush up and remember and move ahead with the exam. But in detail, if you want to go, it's a very good topics to read about. Role-based access control, yes. Role-based access control is the roles defines to the scopes. You have three basic roles. I think I've mentioned these in my blogs. You have contributor, you have owner, and you have reader. These are the three roles which are very much common in Azure. Rest all is, you can say, custom roles which are defined. I think there's one more rule being added. I mean, one more role being added, but that is for AC 104, not for AC 900. Yes, allow model is something that is more important. Allow model is something that can have multiple permissions. So one resource or resource group can have multiple RBAC rules associated with it. It's not limited to only one role. And it is enforced by the IAM template in the Azure portal. This is one of the most common practice questions which I came across. There is, how do you access role-based access control? So it is IAM template pane. This is the structure of the scopes and the role and what is RBAC all about. As you can see, there is a reader, there is also specific custom and contributor roles. And the scopes are resource groups, subscription, and management groups. Each of them are actually categorized as observers, user managing resources, admins, and automated process. Automated process is nothing but you have your ARM templates there. Now we come to identity. One of the more fundamental topics of Azure, very, very close to Azure's heart, is identity services and Active Directory. They start off with saying that what is authorization, authentication, and authorization. The basic definition, I mean, in terms of Microsoft, is authentication, which is legitimate credentials. Username, password must be accurate and must be accurate. I'm sorry, yeah. They must be accurate. And authorization is who is allowed to use, if the user, even if it is authenticated, is he worthy enough to actually use this resource? So that is authorization, or C. Active Directory is actually a cloud entity which was introduced in Microsoft in Windows 2000. And since then, it has been a very integral part of MS operating system, or MS frameworks everywhere. You have Azure Active Directory actually monitors signing attempts. Azure Active Directory monitors signing attempts on the cloud basis, but Active Directory does not monitor sign-in attempts. This is one point which we actually came across in MS Learn. And you have a single user associated with a particular Active Directory. This is the same for Azure Active Directory and Active Directory itself. You have something called as Azure AD Connect, Active Directory Connect. This is what connects Active Directory with Azure Active Directory in case you're using the cloud and also the on-premises Active Directory. And something there, like I was saying, in the scopes, you have a tenant for a management groups. In this scope, what we have here, there's another level here which is actually a tenant, which does not come under RBAC. All this comes under only Azure subscriber. It comes under Azure Active Directory, and a tenant is represented by an organization. So an organization is treated as a tenant. Single sign-on is nothing but one user can only sign on with one registrable credentials, and you can use multiple apps and services of Azure as well as Microsoft, say Office 365, or you can use it for Intune, you can use it for say Dynamics 365, Power Apps, everything. So single sign-on is one sign-in for all these apps. A guest user has its own credentials, and there is something called as B2B. B2B is not in the syllabus or inside the course path, but it is one of the frequent practice questions which I came across, and it sometimes comes in the exam also, is what I've heard. Multi-factor authentication. This is very much important in terms of your your architecture certification, and also your role-based certifications. There is something, you have three factors basically: what the user knows, what the user has, and what the user is. So, segregation is that what he knows is the username password, and what the user has is a code in the mobile, or notification, or a message that comes from the app. And you have the biometric of what the user is. Say it's mostly in terms of fingerprint or even a face ID. Conditional access is Azure Active Directory has two tiers, that is Azure Premium 1 and 2 licenses, and this comes under conditional access. So you have you have a signal, you have a decision, that is a conditional, and you have the enforcement. So all of this comes under the conditional access. And as on top of that is built as something called as a what if tool. Privacy and compliance features. So we move on to the last topic, I think, for this, the most elaborate and the last topic. Privacy and compliance resources. Like I said, Microsoft compliance is very much close to its heart. So you have compliance, which means that what is compliance? It is basically a law or a set of rules which actually everybody has to alert. Regulatory compliance is a body which actually enforces these rules, and controls are nothing but the good standards. The benchmarks for all the standards of the rules. There are four categories of compliance across all Azure services around the globe. That is, you have global, you have US government, industry, and regional. How do you segregate that? Is the global standards are applicable all over the globe. US government standards are applicable only for the US government. Industry standards are applicable for industry domain companies, and regional standards are applicable for region-based segregations. There are five regions. Yes, I think, yeah, there are five regions in Azure. Uh, you have America, you have Europe, you have Middle East and Africa, and then you have Asia, and you have Australia. So you have, yeah, Asia Pacific, and under Asia Pacific there's another sub region, that is the DZ1, which is Australia. And these are the others are the actually compliance bodies. that is CGIS, that is Criminal Justice Information Services. They are information database basically, and they are APIs which are need to be access these information from the database of CGIS. So CGIS is actually a government body which actually regulates this information to flow from, say, a public domain to a private domain or to an organization domain. Cloud Star Alliance, Cloud Security Star Alliance is nothing but you have so star certifications which have three parameters. They are explained in detail in the MS Learn path. And you have for European module, you have your European Union model clauses. HIPAA, which is very much relevant in healthcare domain and very much useful for anybody who's working in healthcare. This is something that is where they come across each and every time they work with any application. 27018 is actually for personal services. It's an ISO standard, that is standard international standard for organization for standards, and it is the, you can say, a body which actually has, this 2701 is actually very much important in terms of RPC, remote procedure. You have RPC calls, that is remote procedure calls, and there is something called as RPC in terms of OpenAuth. So RPC in terms of OpenAuth, 27001 and 27018 are very much important. Multi-tier cloud security is in Singapore. You have Security Organization Controls 1, 2, and 3. NIST, FedRAMP, HITRIST. These are part of US government. And UK government has G-Cloud. Privacy is nothing but Microsoft's privacy policies. This is very much important in terms of exams. These are questions which are actually tricky sometimes in the practice test. MS privacy statement is actually what MS Microsoft collects and how it uses as your personal data. Service terms are nothing but your legal agreements with Microsoft. They are volume licensing programs, which are the terms and conditions of the licensing of whatever data you share with Microsoft and how it uses it for your, and does not share it with anybody else without your consent. Data protection addendum is the obligations Microsoft is liable to actually protect your data, and it has very much to its heart, and Microsoft takes very seriously. You have Trust Center, you have Service Trust Portal, and you have Azure Government. These three topics are the most relevant in the exams. In all the practice tests, I had at least for 3 or 4 questions coming out of these three. And Azure China 21 YNet, I don't know why this is there in the syllabus, but I never saw any question on this. In all my research for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever I was working on, I never saw one question on Azure China. But yeah, it is there, and 21 YNet is a company which actually holds the data centers for Azure and does not allow any traffic to go outside of its own data centers. There is a 50% foreign investment in case you want to qualify for the permits for this data center. Security center, yes, you have this is the third topic, yes. This is the final topic of this session. And you have security centers, you have sentinels, you have key vault, host. So all these topics are very much prevalent, like I was saying, for all the clouds, not just Azure, and very much handy in case you want to actually explore in terms of not just in terms of networking, but also in terms of cloud compute, because it's also useful in terms of transfer of data and security. Very much useful for your security certifications as well. You have Azure Security Center monitoring service provides visibility of security posture to all the services and on premises. A security posture is nothing but its controls. It predicts, prevents, and responds to security threats. That is what is a posture. You have something called as a security hygiene. It's a security hygiene, which is high, medium, and low. A security score is nothing but so score required to remediate your score from a single resource which controls it. So these three topics are actually a basis of the security center and the foundation which you build the security, and very much important for the exam. ASC, that is Azure Security Center capabilities are policy compliance, continuous assessment, ex- uh, existing tailored recommendations, threat protection. There is no shortcut to this. Everybody has to buy this. There is no, you have to buy these terms and you have to get these terms inside your bag. There is no shortcut to actually move away from them. Threat protection is nothing but just-in-time VM access, adaptive applications controls, adaptive network hardening, file integrity monitoring. All of this actually has to be at the back of your head in terms of the exam and also in terms of your hands-on job. There is no shortcuts for this. I'm sorry, but having said that, these are not that difficult to remember as well. I have given some techniques and mind maps in my blogs for you to actually help remember this. Workflow automation is nothing but a logical app which actually automates the Azure Security Center. It's nothing but using it uses machine learning, and it just sends messages in case there's a security breach, or it triggers a function and also shuts down the network in case there is a security breach. Azure Sentinel is SIEM plus SOAR, which is event management, information event management, and SOAR is an orchestration response. Again, there is no easy way to move about this and understand this. This is a hardcore. There's something called as Kubernetes uh, programming, which is a security standard, and SOAR follows that. So SIEM is an orchestration. SIEM is with Kubernetes, and SOAR actually is the orchestration of SIEM. So that is how it works. And you have Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is very much important in terms of networking certifications, not just for Azure, but also for, you can say, in terms of other clouds. You have different terminology for that, but the key vaults are coming in the picture there as well. They are used to manage secrets, basically your passwords or any important documentation you want to key value pairs you have, or anything you want to store in Azure in an encrypted format, your certificates. Your TLS certificates, not documentation, I'm sorry, your TLS certificates, they come under Azure Key Vault. Again, here it is something called as, it is backed up in something, the hardware security modules. These are black boxes basically, which have, your keys stored away from the server racks inside a separate storage service, and only connected via limited connections from the network. So you can actually remove that and keep it in a separate place also, so that it does not affect your cloud or on-premises, or your, you can say, uh, I'm not saying, it's more like it cannot affect your on-site cloud environment also. They cannot access the cloud environment also. They are safe in a vault. A dedicated host. So dedicated host is nothing but a physical server which actually you only define and you borrow from Azure. So saying that I want this server, just not just server, this VM, I want the whole server for myself, a physical server for myself. So they are charged by the host. They are independent of number of VMs they can. There's a 35-day over period, and they're categorized and built according to VM family type, hardware size, and region. Now you have one of the most important topics of networking, which is defense in depth. From the network layer to the application layer, from the physical layer to the application layer, every step of the way you have a defense, a security level that it needs to be passed. This is basically in case of an attacker who was to stop the attacker from actually reaching the data by segregating it into layers so that he does not get access to all of your information. And it's more like, you can say, one gate, you need to pass on one gate, and you need to pass another gate, and you need to pass another gate in case you want to actually have access to the final information. Physical security, as it says, it's a physical safeguard, it's a physical data center, security, your storage services. There is one video I saw some place in Dublin which has a closed environment of data and the data center which is inaccessible to the outside world, and it is pretty huge. It is almost as three, four football fields. And you have identity access. You have a perimeter. Perimeter is one of the questions which I saw in the practice test. That is DDoS protection to filter large scale attacks. Network security, of course, it is denied by default, and there's something called a principle of least privilege also, which applies to network security. Compute is nothing but secure VMs and endpoint protections. Endpoint protections is nothing but your APIs need to be protected via encryption algorithms, AES. Basically, it's a symmetric AES. You have encryption SHA 1, 2, 3, 4. And applications need to be protected via storing the data in a separate layer in a database layer. So, and you have the data which is stored in a database inside disks, and basically stored in SaaS portals also. I mean, in case you want to access your apps data, you store it in the federated account of your on-premise solution also, which is considered to be a SaaS, and it can be retrieved via Office 365 credentials. Azure Firewall, yes, this is one of the most important topics of networking again. It's a PaaS service, a platform as a service, and it is basically rules for the IP addresses, application network level protection across different subscriptions and network server, virtual networks. You have to remember these terms as FQDN, NAT, and destination source, destination ports, and addresses. So these three terms are basically which define Azure Firewall. And you have something called as for application gateway. You have an application firewall, not just of a physical network or a transport layer network or data network. You have application layer firewall as well. And this is front door, and there's something called as Azure front door, which controls the data in the content delivery network. Content delivery network actually removed from AZ 900, and it is still there in 104 and 204, which is for video files and large streaming of data, say a football match or video streaming of any say, uploaded live streaming material. Application security group is nothing but port-wise filtering and services. Azure DDoS protection, again, one more very important topic and very much relevant in all the certifications. Distributed denial of service is nothing but in denial of service is nothing but in case the user actually hampers and actually uses up makes the resource in terms of OS. If you say it's kind of a dead dog, or it is kind of so busy that you cannot even actually access or even use this product or resource or service, or even in some cases a subscription. This is what happens when you have DDoS attacks. There are three types. Basically, you have a basic and a standard. Basic comes with the subscription of Azure. There's nothing you need to do about it. But in case you want, say, find out the root causes of or you have a machine learning algorithms which actually detect and prevent such attacks. So you use something called as a standard, which has works on the two layers, that is of the OSI model, that is level 3 and level 4 and level 7 attacks. Network security group, I think this is the last topic here. Network security group is pretty much straightforward. It is nothing but segregation based on IP addresses, ports, and destination addresses, and there's something called as priority. A priority and the name of the service are very much important in the Azure portal. No service can have the same priority. There is a range. Yes, there is a range from 100 to 4096, and whatever is the lowest one has the highest priority. For custom-defined network security groups as well, which you have to actually have to override them in case you want to write new rules on that. So what you do is that you just give a priority less than that and a priority number less than that, and then you define your own rule. Direction and protocol is also mandatory in terms of Azure in case you're using the Azure portal. But network security group is unique to Azure only. It's not common in other clouds. Yes, I think we are done for this. And those, you have my websites and links below. All my training material, everything that is there is very much useful. And just brush up with that is more than enough for you to actually gain easy 900. Very, very, very nice. I mean, very, you can say elegant score. I won't say nice score, very fast score. You're gonna have a need to have an elegant score saying that, I mean, I should be proud that I have scored this much. So that is what I have done. And I hope this helps you. Do like, subscribe, and share my video to all your contacts. Thank you so much. Have a good day.